This week, the week of November 9th, we'll be reviewing the whole class. Everything we talked about for this whole semester since late in August of this year. It's been crazy. We've been doing everything remote. We're all learning how to do this best. I haven't done it perfectly, but I have tried to make an effort to make sure you have what you need to succeed in this class. And what I'm doing now is providing you some overview in this presentation today, and over a big picture. What is this class about? How can you best make some sense of this class in order to put all the details together and be prepared to take the final exam. The exam will be available to you on campus. I'm expecting a week from Wednesday on the 18th. You'll have a week to get it done and turn it in. It will be multiple choice and like the midterm, multiple choice, fill in the blank, matching, true and false, and one big essay question. So you'll need some details. You'll need to remember some things about all of the religions we've studied, all your ways of understanding God, and you'll need to be able to think critically and comparatively about these religions. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to get you in a bigger frame of mind of thinking about this class and how do you understand it. I want to begin by saying that this class is about ideas of God. It's not about the truth about God. That's a valid question. What is the true God? But that's not the question we're asking in this class. In this class, we're asking, how can we best understand different people in the world, people in our neighborhoods, people in our community, people around the world who have very different ideas about God than we do. You see, ideas, that's the stuff of the mind. God is a mystery. Nobody knows for sure exactly who God is, what the transcendent, what the holy. It's a mystery. And anybody who tells you they know for certain, they're not being humble enough about their understanding of that. But they do have ideas, and their ideas are unique to them. And the idea is, if we can listen to each other, if we can get to know each other, if we can ask, tell me some more about this idea. It's very different from mine, and I'm curious about it. We can understand that person as a human being and build community between them rather than enmity, rather than antagonism. And in the process, we might learn something about our own sense of God and our own ideas of God. So it's about ideas of God. Those ideas of God are based on an experience of God. Ideas, transcendent, experience of the transcendent. And this is the second piece of what we're looking at today. Early in the class, I gave you a presentation and a paper, a 5 or 6 page paper on experiences of the transcendent, of the mystery, the holy, that mystery that surrounds us. And it's a valid way of studying religions. It's called phenomenology. We look at not just the ideas, but the actual human experiences. What happened to those people that led them to have those particular beliefs and thoughts about their God? So the process was a 5-point process. One is the understanding that there is this mystery that surrounds us, is within us and beneath us and above us and beyond us. And nobody knows for sure exactly how to make sense of it, except that Many, many people have had, and I ask you to write a paper about it, have had some kind of a sense of an experience of, oh, there's something here, deep within me, outside me, above me, beyond me. Something has connected with me, has made an impact on me. It's got my attention. And that experience is that of that otherness is what how we start. It could happen in a dream. It could happen in a worship experience. It could happen while somebody is studying or reading. It could happen while one is sitting quietly and thinking deeply. It could happen in a loving relationship with somebody else. It could happen with an experience in nature, a sunset, a forest, a beautiful glade, an encounter with a wild animal, a deer in the woods. However it comes as a full-fledged, enveloping experience. That's an aha moment in life. Not everybody has them, but most religions begin with that kind of experience. Now, when the third step, when it happens, when we are impacted, connected with the mystery, the holy, it's so strange and unusual. Our mind struggles to make sense of it. And that's what our minds do. Whatever happens, if we trip over a thing in the sidewalk, we want to go, what happened? And we tell ourselves a story about it. Oh, that wasn't there yesterday. I wonder what that's about. Oh, or maybe I'm not picking my feet up high enough when I'm walking, or maybe I'm just clumsy. I tell myself a story and make sense of the experience. That's how we deal with the experience. We put it in, and the story is always connected with our context, with my history, my culture, where I grew up, who my family was, the kind of people I'm used to, and the way I usually make sense of the world. In the 21st century, we make sense of the world according to the usual ways of understanding the 21st century. It's very different than 4,000 years ago when early Jewish people were having their experiences of God out in the desert. Those are different. They're different contexts of the way we tell the story. So we have the experience, we tell a story, tell ourselves the story. The next piece is we tell others, share that story with somebody else. I want to share it. I want to tell about it. I can't stand having it all by myself. Eventually I tell somebody else. And the way I tell that story then gathers other people around me. Sometimes these stories, this experience is so shareable and so identifiable that it begins to build a community around it. And the really big ones create a community that becomes a religious community. It becomes a religion. It becomes a faith that people all together believe in. And those stories turn into beliefs. Yes, this is how we understand the transcendent. Doctrines with structured, organized religion. That's the 5 steps of the experience of the transcendent. I want you to keep that in mind. I want you to be able to relate that to various and sundry religions. Now, the third piece is ideas about God, understanding the experience of the transcendent. The third piece I would want you to be able to do is want you to be able to compare and contrast religions with each other. It will be better able to understand something if I can compare it to something else. If I have seen and had an experience of a particular sports, I've never actually understood much about soccer. But if I can compare it with what I understand about football and what's different, I can begin to understand it better. So if I begin to compare and contrast Christianity with Islam, how are they similar? Well, they have similar backgrounds and understandings of the Abraham and the prophets and Jesus are all part of that, and yet Jesus is not God for them. Muhammad is not God for them. That's a very different kind of thing. You see, there's a contrast there. So I'm just going to give you a little exercise now. I'm going to run you through this. I've thought of a way of comparing several of other religions we've studied, not all of them, in terms of what their experience, what the original experience of the transcendent was. Where did it happen? It's very important to understand the where. What was the cultural, political context of that experience? And what were the themes, what's the main theme of the story, the originating story for that religion? Okay? And I'm going to publish this paper along with this video so you have a sense of following us along. I haven't figured out how to, there's too much to write on the board, and I haven't figured out how to present on this platform a written piece along with what I'm saying. So here, I'll give it to you otherwise. So for Judaism, I'm going to do Judaism, the Jesus movement originally, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, right? For Judaism, the original experience, let's say, was Moses in the desert and the burning bush. This is in Exodus, the story of Exodus, in the book of Exodus. Moses, this is in the Middle East. He's actually in the desert between Egypt and Palestine, somewhere around Sinai. And so this is in Asia with some connections with Africa. And he is tending his father-in-law's sheep, carrying on like usual, although he's escaped from Egypt because he was a wanted man. And he experiences God speaking to him in a burning bush. God says, I want you to set my people free. That was his experience of something other that just grabbed him, it captured him, and how he told the story. The context was the Jewish people were apparently lots of them were enslaved in the advanced civilization down in Egypt, an African country. And that's not where they belonged. They were suffering. It was the conditions of slavery were worse and worse. So the story that Moses and then the people continued to tell about that experience was, the theme of the story was liberation, freedom from slavery. See how this works? The religion is Judaism, the original experience, the burning bush. Where did it happen? In West Asia and Africa. The context was a slavery situation, and then the story theme is liberation. Now, second, we'll look at Jesus, the Jesus movement. Before we get into the development of Christianity as a world religion, Jesus as we knew Jesus in the Gospels, the original experience of that Jesus movement and the religion Jesus was, the original disciples were all about, was the temptation of Jesus in the desert. He went off to pray to kind of figure out what his life was about. Not unlike Muhammad, by the way. And he was tempted. He was tempted to give his life over to wealth, to power and success, or to feeding people by magic. And he could have bowed to the powers that were. And he didn't. He said, no, that's not what life's about. And he got clear. So that happened in the Middle East. The context is his people, the Jewish people, who had been there for 2,000 years, but now were occupied by the outside European conquerors, Rome, and they were pretty much oppressed. They were nothing in Roman eyes. And the story theme that Jesus pulled from that experience and his other experiences of God were, we've got to live our lives with spiritual integrity. We'll find inside ourselves the spirit, the kingdom of God is within you, he said. That's the way he understood this, the experience, the story he told himself. That was the theme. So that was the Jesus movement. As the movement moved on, we come to what I call the Christianity religion, that more like what we know it today. In the 300 years after Jesus, the experience was no longer Jesus' individual experience in the desert, but the experience of resurrection. Jesus had been, their hero, had been executed by Rome, by crucifixion. And in the Roman experience, the Roman intention with execution, with crucifixion, was you just completely humiliate a person so much and leave them to rot on the cross, and that person is as if they never lived. But that didn't happen with Jesus. The wonder of those people, it was an experience of the holy, when the wonder was they found themselves revitalized, transformed, energized to share the good news about this inner integrity in the spirit, the kingdom of God around the world. They became different. And the story they're told, and the themes, the context of that was the mixed cultures of Europe and Asia. And because of their connection with Platonism and the Plato philosophy of Greeks, they began to tell them stories about the permanent security of heaven, that you can permanently be forgiven of all your sins and you're okay for all eternity. Now, so that's Christianity. For Islam, of course, you remember that for Muhammad, the experience was that message in a cave. He was off praying in a cave. An angel spoke to him, told him to write and recite and keep in mind all these things I want to tell you. That was his experience. This also happened in Western Asia, in the Arabian Peninsula. These are brown people from West Asia. There was, then the context was that Muhammad's people had been poor, migrating, wandering Bedouins, and the trade routes came through and they became quite prosperous. And they lost their sense of community, their sense of belonging to each other. They were only looking out for themselves. That was the context. And the theme he told in the story was, Allah is our God. We now have our own God speaking to us, who wants us to be a community, wants us to live in solidarity with each other and with the world. That's how he told the story of his experience of the angel in the cave. For Hinduism, they realized there were many, many gods, but as they became more prosperous and civilization came about 1800 years before Christ, they realized they couldn't blame everything on the gods anymore. They had to begin to take some responsibility for themselves. Where? This is Asia, South Asia and India. And the context was this change, cultural change going on. And the theme of the story is you can't blame it on the gods. It's karma. It's the rules, the rules of cause and effect, so that your life is determined not by the gods, but by your behavior. Buddhism is very similar. Buddha's original experience was his ecstatic enlightenment and understanding of everything under the Bodhi tree that he sat there for 3 days. This also is in India. This is Asian. And the context was, yeah, there's karma and there's all this stuff, but there's still suffering. What about the suffering? And the theme of his understanding of his experience was, we can deal with suffering if we can just detach from it. If we can just separate ourselves from our desires and our cravings and our expectations and have compassion for other people instead of worrying about what I want. There's a quick illustration of how to compare and contrast religions to each other based on their experience of the transcendent. That ties two things together in the class. I will be asking you to do some thinking and to be able to compare and contrast one religion to another. And as we're thinking about, that's how I'll know whether you're understanding these religions. And now, the other thing about the exam is you'll need to be able, not only be able to think critically and appreciatively about these religions, but also need to have some details, some specific things you will need to hang, their hooks to hang your understanding of these religions on. So, among those details are, you should know the date of the origin. When did this religion begin? Where did it begin? You need to be able to sense of how that connects with the axial age, by the way, and go back and look at that. I mentioned that a few times, or look it up. Second, you should be able to identify and have in your head, or be able to find quickly, specific ideas about God in each one of the religions we've studied. What are the names they use for God? What are the definitions, the characteristics of that God? What are their basic beliefs and doctrines? What are their moral rules? How do they live their lives as a result of what they believe about God? What are the rituals and practices that they do to remind themselves about what life's all about? It's unique to each one of them. And then I need you to remember, what are the names of the houses of worship for each one of them? What are the names of their religious leaders? The Islamic houses of worship are called a mosque. The religious leaders in Christianity, we have pastors or ministers. We also have bishops and archbishops, and in Christian and Roman Catholicism, we have a pope. You have to kind of be able to connect those so that you can converse helpfully and intelligently with a person of another religion. On Wednesday, I'll give you I'll send out a review sheet as well for you to start working on. I want you to start reviewing, well, if you haven't done all your other papers and term papers, get that done first. And then once you've got caught up, then that will help you then go back and review everything, your readings, your papers, my presentations, uh, and think about all of the religions we've studied from August till now. And it's been a rather somewhat shortened semester, so it might not be too hard to do. And I will engage in some conversations that will review and help you solidify things that but the questions I ask, you'll have a sense of, oh, that's what he's looking for. I give you lots of hints about what's going on. If we have some time, I'll want us to share the papers that you all have been writing so that you all can learn from each other about your various religions. I will let you know I'm very much appreciating this class. It's very good to be learning together with you at Simmons College, even in this very difficult pandemic time. I'll see you on Wednesday.